Okay, fans of all things cool out there, this is Steve Rude, the Dude, coming to you for the third time on Free Comic Book Day. As you can see in the background, this is something I've been working on for the last week or so. It's an ode to the cast of Star Trek Continues, clearly and obviously the best Star Trek produced program, aside from the original, that's probably ever been done. And the guy in charge is a man named Vic Mignogna, and he's somebody that I just recently wrote to and asked if I could help out as somebody who was a fan of the show to give my appreciation for the work that he put into this series here, which is remarkable. Anyone who's seen it would know that. So this is something I've been working on right here that he will be presented with when it's finished, probably in a couple days or so. So we get a close-up here, we can see that this work is done with paint, watercolor paint, and there's some color pencil thrown in too. So in a couple days I should have this wrapped up. We got a few more characters to finish off right here, and then we'll see the reaction of the guy that put the show together right here, Mr. Mignogna himself. Let's put this aside for right now and mention a few things about the things that are going on. I always like to show a little piece of original art before we get started here, and in this case I'm going to show something that a lot of you remember from years ago. This is the Nexus Family Portrait, and you can see this is pretty good sized here. This is as big as the illustration board gets. It was done a 300 medium weight illustration board. It should have been heavyweight. This is pretty skinny here, but it's probably just something I had lying around. This is done back in the, I think it was '89, and this is back when I had an airbrush, before I got rid of the damn thing. You can see some of the airbrush in the background. This actually took me a remarkably short amount of time to do it. I remember struggling, and finally I made a breakthrough, and then I was just blazing ahead with this thing. 90% of this was made up. Again, I don't know how I do this stuff. It's just all the practice, I guess. But I see things in my head, and from there, you just start to do the work and kind of go by the training that you had for all those years and follow your instincts. A lot of artists happen to see things in their head that they which is why they become artists. And from there, I think the field that's most receptive to people who have a wild imagination is the one that I'm in, which is the comic book field. So cheers to comic books, everyone out there, on the day that happens to be the day we're broadcasting, which is Free Comic Book Day. Now, there's a virus going on in the world right now that is keeping a lot of people at home, and that's one of the reasons that we thought we'd broadcast in this way from my studio here in Phoenix, Arizona. So we have a couple things that we're talking about here. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is something that some of you have some interest in. This is my sketchbook, and you can see some of the practice warm-up things I do to start my day off. Some of it is pen and ink, some of it is just studies of my hand for something I had going on at the moment. And turn the page around and you have, this is an Austin Briggs painting that I really liked. I love the looseness of this thing. And I was doing some watercolor studies, and this is some studies from the late Jeff Jones, one of the guys from the studio in New York, who made a big impact in the illustration field back in the 70s. So that gives you an idea of some of the things I do to warm up in the morning, which I always like to do. It's just plain fun. Before work starts, I like to play around a little bit. The Nexus Chronicle is a 300-page hardcover book that features pencils and inks for the most part. This is how comic books are produced. We draw it in pencil and we do it in ink. There's also a section in the back right here, way in the back, that shows some of the fine artwork that I've done in the past decade or so. These are actual models that I hired to come to my studio, and I painted them live. This is a girl that poses a ballerina, obviously. This is the girl that was in a very successful local rock band in Phoenix here. And she was a real sweetheart. I remember having a great time painting her. And some other things, some of my sketchbook studies. I think whenever I put a book out, there's going to be things where I feature my sketchbook studies here, because that's what I'm always working on to hopefully improve. These are life studies right here. This is something I actually did from memory. I drew it while Brandon was sitting there with his computer on the couch, and then I went upstairs after memorizing. I trained my brain to actually memorize the color scheme. And this is a trick that anybody can learn, but it is something that you have to work at before it's something you can do with any kind of accuracy at all. Here's my studio, the one that you currently see me in now. Some Nexus animation stuff. I'm always working on my Nexus animated TV show, hoping to get it on the air someday. And I believe these are pages from the upcoming newspaper strip, Nexus, the newspaper strip. More stuff from the animation that I'm working on for Nexus, which I have high hopes of achieving someday, hopefully soon, which means you'll be seeing an animated Nexus cartoon show in the style of Johnny Quest and Space Ghost from the Hanna-Barbera studios from the early 60s.
Someone said, how about a Justice Society of America sketch? Not Superman or Batman, but someone like Hourman, Wildcat Flash, Green Lantern, or Dr. Fate.
Yeah. We got a lot of guys that want me to do this vintage stuff. I got to tell you guys, I didn't grow up in the DC comic book, so I'm not really a huge fan of that period. I grew up in Silver Age Marvel comics, and most notably from anything that Jack Kirby had done during that time. So these are things that I don't have a whole great interest in drawing here. On occasion, I'll do things like that in commissions, but I have to like the costume and I have to like the art style before I'll take it on. We have one more drawing to do today. This is going to go off to somebody, this 9x12 piece of paper right here. We're going to go back to fundamentals here and just do something on a basic white piece of paper. I haven't thought of the character yet, so if you guys have any suggestions of what I can do on this piece of paper, character-wise, give me a shout, and we'll see if I like it enough to want to do it.
Someone said Spidey would be cool.
Spider-Man. Okay, there we go. First come, first serve. We're going to be doing Spider-Man on this little piece of paper right here. After that, we have this bucket list of people that have ordered things on Free Comic Book Day, and these are the people that are going to be part of the drawing for Free Comic Book Day that this drawing is going to go to. I'll just pick a name out of a bucket. We'll announce who it is over the airwaves here, and that's going to go off to the person that we pick here. Traditionally, it's been, so far, the winner has been picked by my dog, Chloe, but in case she's being a hound dog here, and being what a hound dog does, which is sleep, I'll have somebody in the immediate vicinity that might do the drawing for us. So, we got a request for Spider-Man. Let's grab the pencil. We got the paper. Let's go to work here and see what we can do for doing Spider-Man. First thing that artists do is they get something in their head. And this is the image that's coming out of my head right now.
How much does Steve spend on art supplies a month?
How much? Somebody wants to know how much money I spend on art supplies a month. Not as much as I wish I could get. Princess, my wife Janelle, actually has me way down on the list as far as priorities go about ordering. So you guys can write it and tell her about how you feel about that. But I would say once every 3 months, I do a huge art supply order. If I don't go down to the local store right here, I will order from Blick, who are some people that I have a great relationship with, and that's always a lot of fun to order from them. They're just top notch. the services are always nice.
Someone said, "Can't go wrong with Spidey."
Well, if you're an artist, you can go wrong all the time. Hopefully not in front of you guys, though. That would be embarrassing. Okay, so I think we have the costume more or less down here. So let's grab our markers and see what we can do here. I've got two markers. I got a thick one and I got a thin one. This is a sign pen from Pentel right here that I have that I really quite like using right here. You can see the tip in this thing. It's got a very flexible tip. It's almost like a pen nib point, but it's flexible like a marker should be.
Someone said, "What are some important business skills artists should learn to be successful in the industry?"
Well, you wouldn't want to ask me because I have no business skills. Most artists, part of the way they get taken advantage of is business is just something that they don't have a great deal of interest in. That would include myself. So I have Janelli, my wife, that does a lot of the business stuff for me. I would say 90% of it. We decided things together, the kind of projects we'll agree to do, and the amount of money that commissions might go over, things like that. Janelle basically takes care of that. So when you order commissions from me, you're normally going through her first, and then she'll pass it by me, see if it's something I'm interested in actually doing. I probably end up turning down at least half of the commission requests that I get. A lot of them are characters that I don't feel like something I have a whole lot of interest in doing. So I find often that I tend to like a lot of the obscure stuff. Like I just got a request for Uma Thurman from Kill Bill. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I agreed to do that one right there. A lot of non-comic book stuff gets chosen by me of things that I want to do. So, yeah, not your average artist when it comes to making decisions about just doing any old thing that comes my way. I'm lucky enough to be able to pick and choose.
Someone said, "I've read a lot about your thoughts on Kirby. Since you're doing a Spider-Man, could you talk a little bit about Ditko?
Yeah, Steve Ditko. Yeah.
Or Romita and their influence on your work?"
Yeah, let's do that. Well, as far as given the energy level I'm at right now, after doing 3 of these things already during the afternoon on Free Comic Book Day, I'll see if I can some of the mental acuity to give you a reasonably intelligent answer right here. I think Ditko had a great flair for being unique. What he did was very much a product of his own eccentric kind of way of drawing. He didn't draw people that were classically handsome or girls that were classically pretty. That's what John Romita came in there to take over when he took over Spider-Man. So my preference is for John Romita. I'm a huge John Romita fan from that period, the mid-1960s. But there's a lot of charm that Ditko has that I think people, his fans really respond to. He's got a very quirky way of drawing. I think that accounts for a large part of his appeal for the people that are really Ditko aficionados. I've been working on my feet, guys, so hopefully that shows in the drawings that I'm doing here. Provide your own sound effects here, people. We all know the classic thwip.
Someone said, "Hi, what do you do when you have in your mind the kind of feeling about an illustration you want to do, but you don't succeed and put it in the draw?"
And put it in the drawing. Well, that's what we actually train for our whole lives, is the ability to take what we feel and see in our heads and translate down on paper. I'm a traditional paper guy. I will never work in computers. It's just not my thing. So everything you see that will be put out for me will be done on illustration board, watercolor paper, Bristol board, typing paper, whatever. That's just the era that I come from, and that's how I'm comfortable working. And I don't believe the traditional ways should be abandoned just because a new horse and buggy comes along every 10 years.
Oh, he's back.
Well, it looks like Flowhard's back here. Flowhard is responsible for picking the winner of this Spider-Man sketch. Again, all people that have placed any kind of an order with the Rude Dude Company so far today on Free Comic Book Day are eligible to win this drawing right here, which I'm doing in front of you. Hopefully, is a means of entertainment on these bizarre times of a virus that has invaded most of the free world.
I love this design so much. How much would a commission like this cost?
That's a good question. How much would a commission like this cost? Again, like I mentioned, I'm not the business part of the relationship. That's all up to Princess Janelli. I wish Janelli was here to answer that question. Honestly, if you want to find out prices, they're all listed online. I know that's kind of a hassle. I should probably be able to give you an answer in the here and now, but
Someone
I can't.
said, "Hi Steve, what's your advice to get better at drawing from your head without a model?"
The best, okay, I can definitely answer that. The best way that I know to get better at drawing is to learn the human mannequin. Basically, the mannequin is the way that we always begin with is to construct figures. The gesture, the emotion of the figure we see in her head is all done with a shorthand called the human mannequin. Now, this applies to everything you draw. Basic shapes are involved in drawing the mannequin. They're very simple cylinders and things like that. You saw the way I did Spider-Man here. It was all based on gesture and basic shapes. So if we learn how to memorize those things, we stand a very good chance of learning how to draw things out of our heads that way. And as somebody who is a comic book artist, this is a skill that I think most of us would really like to have under our belts.
Someone said, "I've noticed you don't do a ton of feathering in your shading. Do you find that style unappealing?"
The person writing in is asking about the simplistic. I think the simplistic approach that I always take with my art. There's feathering right there. So feathering is a way of showing light to dark. This is what I think people in the art field would call a halftone area. So it is a little bit done, but it's not overdone. I don't like to overdo that stuff. I kind of come from a school that just shows it in a more simple graphic style. This is a way that I look at it as you can't possibly cheat with your renderings of figures by covering it up with a lot of unnecessary detail. I think I'm going to have Spider-Man in between two walls right here, and that's why his other leg is going out like that. This is a cast shadow. This marker is getting dry. Fortunately, we always keep our feathers numbered if we're just such an emergency.
Someone said, "You make it look so easy. I'm lucky if I can draw stick figures."
Well, in fact, most of us start off by doing a stick figure version of these same characters right here. So all is not lost. It's a lot of hard work, but hard work is fun for guys that want to make something of their lives.
"Hey Steve, from Odd, nice to see you. You look well."
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Odd. So here's Spider-Man right here. Now all we have to do is supply a little bit of webbing. Oh, you know what? I always forget to put this in, but he's got that. He's got this underarm webbing right here. There's some feathering to keep you feathering fans happy right here. Let's get a really skinny pit marker, pit artist pen. This is an F. let's do the webbing on him right here. This webbing is a very particular kind of thing. It's very deliberately done, as though it were actually part of a costume that had been very thought out before. He actually decided, Peter Parker decided to go out and start swinging around between the buildings of New York. Oh, let's see here. Fortunately, Steve Ruth the Dude, being a vintage Spider-Man fan, has memorized the particulars of this, of the webbing design on Spider-Man.
Do you have any particular favorite classic Marvel inkers?
Yeah, as far as inkers goes, everyone has an opinion on inkers. I'm actually, as far as the inkers go at the Silver Age of Marvel, the ones that I grew up being fans of, on Kirby, I really liked Frank Giacoia. And I had the longest time trying to learn how to pronounce that guy's name. And so, until I finally got into the business and people told me. But I thought I liked his work because it was bold and it wasn't fussy over Jack Kirby. And I think that's the best way to ink someone like him. For those of you who don't know, and for the longest time, I myself did not know, inking, I thought the inking was something that the printer did. I thought it was the coloring part of the comic book. No, it's not. It's actually what I'm showing you here. It is going over the pencil drawing with an ink pen or brush with Indian ink on it. That's how comic books are done. Someday inkers may become obsolete. Woe to that moment. Inking is a very shrewd discipline that everyone that ever draws comic books should learn about. It's kind of like the final edited version of a movie. There's a rough cut, which is the pencils, the pencil underdrawing, and then there's the inked version, which really makes it reproducible. Now, someday when that kind of reproduction isn't critical, the comic book production, the inking part will maybe be phased out. I hope it doesn't, because being the traditional kind of guy that I am, I would hate to see inking go away altogether.
Someone said, dig in the dude's web slinger.
And that's good.
Someone says, I loved your work in Spider-Man Lifeline.
Oh, good. Somebody brought up some of the work I did for the Marvel Spider-Man miniseries called Spider-Man Lifeline, that was written by Nicosa, Fabian Nicosa, if I'm pronouncing his name right. We had a great time working together. I love the script that he turned in, that I was able to draw from. It was a 3-issue series that, for anyone who's seen it, it harkened back to the Romita days, which, of course, I'm the biggest fan of. Romita was a classically trained illustrator, and that reflects very clearly in the work that he did when he took over from Steve Ditko on Spider-Man.
Someone said, I've always agonized over Spider-Man's webbing pattern, and the dude just makes it look so effortless. Incredible.
Practice, my friends, practice. So there we go. There's my Spider-Man version right there. Let's see. Let's put some bricks in here. I'm kind of eyeing this out as far as the perspective goes.
Do you still keep up with any of the current comic books? And if so, which ones do you like?
Well, that's a good question. I actually like answering that. Guy wants to know if I keep up with any current comic books. In fact, I don't even read them anymore. All the books that I have stored in my comic book boxes over there are entirely from the age that I grew up. A lot of them are from the 1960s, and a lot of them are from the 1970s. And then when the 1980s came around, that's when I came into the field, and I was still collecting them at the time. But by the time the 90s rolled around, I was really just kind of looking at the work that I grew up on reading, and still learned a lot from by looking and studying from it. So anyway, there's Spider-Man right there. I like to keep things pretty simple with him. There's a lot of little things I could add. A lot of people put little muscle things on him, like the serratus muscles and things like that. I like to be pretty much free of the little things. I like to do the big, broad things, and hopefully that's a style that won't go out of style in the future right here. There's a lot of detail-oriented artists out there these days, so hopefully us classicists can still maintain a readership, even though things change over the years all the time.
Someone said, got anything cooking with Mike Baron right now? You guys always do good work together.
Yeah, me and Mike Baron have stuff cooking. We have a 200-page graphic novel coming out. That snoring in the background is my friend Steve Ringberg, who is bored to death. Hopefully not as much as you guys are here. I'm actually having a good time showing this stuff off. But yeah, we have some new Nexus material coming out. It's going to be called The Coming of Gormondo. It's a huge volume, hardcover, artist edition. It'll be coming out in the form of a 3-issue comic book first, and then it's going directly to this huge artist edition volume that's going to be well over 200 pages. We're really excited about that.
Someone said, what do you think of today's comic book stories out there?
I think they're too dark. I think the comic book stories today are I think they're too involved in how do I properly describe this? What I think about the writing today. I think things are just too damn dark, and I think the fact that the comic book companies have to perpetually reinvent their entire roster from scratch every 5 years ago shows you that it shows you that they're running out of ideas for these characters. I don't believe in that. I think that you follow characters' lives as you would someone in real life. You don't have to make them age, but there are so many stories that take place in somebody's life. Why would you ever run out of material to write about them? I offered to come back to Marvel with a series that I proposed called The Silver Age Reborn, and that was going to be bringing back characters like Captain America and the FF to what I knew them as in the 60s, which is what they based everything they've ever done since those days on, story-wise and art-wise. They bring back the same characters over and over. That's what people want to see. Those are the classic issues that have never grown old or stale. And they just keep regurgitating the same characters all the time, but they have to resort to gimmickry to keep the readership, and the gimmickry is what I don't like. The silver covers that we saw in the 1990s, and this reboot of the entire lineup of books started with the number 1 again. This is all just gimmickry to make up for the fact that I think they've run out of ideas for good stories. At least stories that I would want to read, which is why I don't read them anymore.
Someone said, as someone new to comic book illustration, whose work would you suggest to check out that inspired you?
Yeah, that's a good question. We got some good questions out there because my fans are clearly an intellectual height much higher than the average fan. Of course, that is well known among fandom. That shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. The people I would recommend looking at are the following. In my book, the number 1 guy is Jack Kirby. He was the greatest of all times, and once you see his work, if you respond to it, you'll know why immediately. He is, we call him the king of comic books. He was always the king to me, even before we called him that. So Jack Kirby is number 1. there's an artist named Roy Crane who was really prominent in the comic strip field back in the 1940s. And if you want to study simplicity, I would advise looking at him. He was a cartoony kind of guy, but he could draw everything under the sun as good as anyone who was a realist back then. One of my favorite, all-time favorites is the Master of Kung Fu series from Doug Mensch and Paul Gulacy. If you want to see something I consider the very high point of comic book illustration, look at the Master of Kung Fu comic books that came out in the 1970s. Again, these are all books that reflect the age that I grew up on, so don't be surprised if they look a little dated to some of you guys out there.
Someone said, why do some Spidey emblems have 6 legs and others actually have the 8?
Because we forget how many legs a spider has.
Someone said, I could not agree more. These comic heroes are a modern myth, and there should be no end of stories to tell with them.
In my mind, the fact that me and Baron are working on Nexus after 35 years of doing this character demonstrates the power of the endless storylines that just someone can come up with. I mean, again, like I said when I was answering the question the first time, these characters have lives. Well, do your lives stop after 10 issues or 10 news reports on what you've been blogging about? No, they go on and on and on, and there's always something interesting that can take place in your life. I think a lot of the ideas that I often suggest to Baron come from a single newspaper, a once-a-day newspaper. You can look in a newspaper and come up with probably 10 fantastic ideas for story ideas for your characters. So I don't know. This is why I don't read comic books nowadays. They just don't have any entertainment value to me. They're too convoluted. They're too. I think there's too much going on with them that makes them just not fun to read anymore.
Someone said, what do you think of Robert Crumb?
Robert Crumb was an underground artist, and I think most of you know that I'm kind of a mainstream superhero guy. So I would say that the work that he did is not exactly my cup of tea. So there, my friends.
And while you're recommending stuff, what series from the time Nexus started as an independent would you suggest people to read?
Going back in time here, the Hernandez brothers did a great book called Love and Rockets. I think most of you know about that. Dave Stevens did The Rocketeer. Grendel, Mage, from Matt Wagner, another good friend of mine, did some amazing work back then. Most of these guys were from the independent field. We all kind of hung out together back then because we all had something in common. But yeah, those were good days, and those are some of the books that I would recommend.
That was from Ken Mayer Jr.
Ken Mayer Jr., yeah, the guy who can see behind his head without looking. Good old Ken. Ken is a fantastic artist. He's been doing watercolor work for years now, and every time I'm lucky enough to bump into him, I always want to see what he's up to, because to me, watercolor is the hardest medium there is. So to Ken out there, it's good to hear from you. Thanks, Ken.
Juan Hernandez said, man, I remember being blown away from your artwork on Nexus. Are you and Mike Baron ever going to bring the series back?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we are definitely going to be bringing some new Nexus material back, and it's going to be in the form of a huge graphic novel called The Coming of Gormondo, and that's going to be published by Dark Horse. I expect it to come out this summer. Anyway, let's sign Spider-Man here with a marker, and let's see. Signing it is always a conundrum, but let's sign it here in the side of the building here. 2020 on Free Comic Book Day, and if Flohard is still hanging around, it looks like she is. Flohard, do you see this Spider-Man drawing right here? And I thought I'd get more interest in this. Flohard, this is Spider-Man. You know him, right? Okay. That's a sign that she does, in fact, know Spider-Man. it's time to pick the lucky winner from the red pail. So, Chloe, let's get up here. Here, I'm gonna pick it. Here, you look in there real carefully, okay? And see if there's anything that you want, okay? Don't be afraid. Okay, you picked one there? Okay, good. So the person, this looks like somebody who is not native to the United States here. Ruben Gallegos. Ruben, you are the lucky winner of this Spider-Man drawing right here because you made a donation to the Steve Rude cause earlier today. So this drawing is going to you. Thanks again for your submission. Happy Free Comic Book Day, at least in the virtual world and online. And on behalf of this this live broadcast, we're very thankful to have the fans we have. We'll see you back in an hour for one more final broadcast for Free Comic Book Day. You have until midnight tonight to order something from the Dude household, which we have many, many things that you can order from. And then you're going to be eligible for another free drawing, the final one of the day. Before midnight tonight, get your orders in. We'll see you in a little bit. Take care, you guys. Chloe, good job. We'll see you next time.